Welcome to Balkans Debrief. I am Ilva, Tare, a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Europe Center. North Macedonia, a small nation of 2 million in the Western Balkans, garnered international attention in 2019 when it agreed to seemingly impossible, changing its name in exchange for EU negotiations and NATO membership. While the country secured NATO membership, EU accession talks have stalled for years. And this is due to a combination of factors. The general slowdown in the enlargement process, especially before the Ukrainian war, and Bulgaria's demand for constitutional changes recognizing a Bulgarian minority. For North Macedonians, Sofia's veto was a bitter pill to swallow. Public support for the EU has consequently dropped sharply by 25% in the last 2 years. Why are the parliamentary elections and presidential elections in North Macedonia so important for its EU future? To discuss about this, I'm joined from Skopje by Marko Troshanovski, President at Institute for Democracy. Welcome, Marko.
Thank you for the invitation, Ilva.
As I said, it looks like these elections are very important for North Macedonia. They will be held in May 8th and they will coincide with the second round of the presidential elections. What are the main issues that the political parties are getting ready to campaign on, and why are these elections important?
Well, primarily they are important because the Euro integration perspective of the country is somehow connected to its outcome. You mentioned in your introduction that aside the slowdown in the enlargement process, the fatigue in the EU, there is a demand on the Bulgarian side for including the Bulgarian minority in the constitution. But the very problem actually, that's the pretext. The very problem of the Bulgarian obstruction of the country's EU perspective, actually formal start of negotiation, is goes back to historical and identity issues and disputes. So aside this demand for including of the Bulgarian minority, which by the way is not a problem for none of the political elites in the country, there is an ongoing process where Bulgaria uses the bilateral agreement on friendship to impose its perspective on the identity genesis of the Macedonian people, claiming that there is not actually authentic genesis of the population here of the Macedonians, and that at most of the time they were Bulgarians, and at some point with the intervention of the Communist Party, a separate Macedonian identity was formed. So this is more or less goes in line with the Ukrainian and Russian problem, as you could witness from the latest interview with Tucker Carlson with Putin. But it is a huge blow for the people here that actually agreed to change the name of the country and trade its dignity, so to say, and its right of self-determination for UN and the NATO perspective. And only after 2 years, another boost from the, not boost, a claim or hit from the real political domain came when EU member state Bulgaria now asks for something that is even much more profound and deeper, and that is the right of self-determination and identity. So the problem is actually here: how do we proceed? How do we proceed with the European integration while also having to agree to the demands and the understanding of our own identity from one EU member state? So these elections are actually in between the dilemma on whether to abide or to agree to this type of negotiation process, or just to wait for a better time, better context, or renegotiate this agreement with Bulgaria that will enable, so to say, more substantive enlargement process with actual transformative power. Because the fears at this point are that the negotiations will turn into an actually ever-changing identity policy mostly, and not actually having to do anything with the transformative effect of the negotiation process, the conditionality and the reform agenda in the country. One political coalition says we should go pursue and accept negotiating with Bulgaria, and thus formally being able to start the negotiation with the EU. And the other bloc is saying, no, we traded too much, we sacrificed too much. Now it's time to turn to ourselves and see what's to reform our society, regardless of the EU agenda, which, by the way, is there is a consensus that it is a strategic goal of the country, and nobody denies its importance. But under these conditions, there is a dilemma between the major political blocs.
Das Escobar last week from Brussels, he says that the US has assurance from Bulgaria that North Macedonia wants to be an EU member of the European Union, and hopefully there will not be potential vetoes in the future. Is that enough to reassure the public that this is it, the latest sacrifice to officially start the negotiations?
None at all, actually. The frustration of the people has piled not in the past 2 years, but it goes back down from the first bit in Bucharest 2009, where President Bush said, tomorrow we are welcoming Macedonia as a NATO ally, and Greece blocked it. So people have lost trust in official statements from prominent political figures. It's not only that. There were many statements in between this period where representatives of EU came. It was the same during the referendum on the name change, where most of the representatives, both of EU and NATO and the important EU member states and US, came to reassure the people that this will be the last concession people will make. And actually, the people faced very bitter reality afterwards. So, to some extent, it is even counterproductive to again try to convince people when they have much opposite experience in the past.
I see. Meanwhile, surveys show that there is an advantage of the current opposition party to win, the center-right VRMNO-DPMNE. What this will mean for the EU perspective of North Macedonia, and what are the potential foreign policy scenarios if the opposition wins?
Well, it really much depends on the with what number, what will be the percentage of the votes that will go for VRMNO-DPMNE. It seems that the turnout will not be very high due to the huge disappointment with the internal situation in the country, rule of law, decay, and so forth and so on. So the turnout to trust in institution is a huge problem. So it turns out the turnout will be low. This means that VRMNO-DPMNE, although leading significantly on the polls, will not be able to form that solid government, if at all, with the other actors in the arena. This means that a lot of negotiations and much more fragility of their currently previously rigid position will be on the table after the election, meaning that VRMNO-DPMNE will probably have to make more concessions with regard to agreeing to including the Bulgarian minority in the constitution and continuing the EU agenda. They were very rigid throughout the past few years on the matter. Truth to be told, the thing is, they never said that they will not include the Bulgarian minority in the constitution. Their position is that aside this, what is behind the surface is the potential identity politics, redesigning, as I mentioned, the identity of the people, and they do not agree with this aspect, because the negotiation process, the negotiation over chapters and so forth and so on, has to do a lot with the Copenhagen criteria, but also there is a lot of political power behind, and EU member states pursuing their own interests, irrespective of the Copenhagen criteria. So, although VRMNO said they will not negotiate on this matter, and they will ask for a redesign of the negotiation framework with the EU and so forth, my forecast is that they will be ready to make concessions on this matter with small symbolic political gestures that could reassure the people here that and save VRMNO face after all, that the negotiation process will be all about merit and not about blackmailing.
I understand. Then what are, in your view, the hopes for the center-left Social Democrats led by Kovacevski to win these elections?
The prospects are very low. They came to power on the wave of huge popular dissatisfaction from the VRMNO-DPMNE rule. The state was back then designated as a capture state. All the reports were very negative. But since then, actually, the situation worsened in many aspects. We had one major breakthrough in the international political domain, the NATO membership, and maybe significant improvement in the sphere of media pluralism and media liberties. But aside that, the situation especially with the corruption, with impunity, with misuse of public administration and so forth worsened significantly, and you can top up on this the corona crisis, the economic crisis, and the current security crisis in the world. So all this created a perfect storm that will definitely blow all possible chances that the Social Democrats currently win some votes that will be enough for them to make a government for the next term.
Marko, in your view, what does the presence of two Albanian presidential candidates signify, especially now that we have two Albanian camps, DUI of Alia Mehdi and the opposition bloc on the other side?
The good thing is that finally there is a healthy competition between the Albanian blocs, the representatives of ethnic Albanians in the Macedonian political debate. Unfortunately, our political parties are still based on ethnic background and ethnic politics rather than citizen-based politics. So, but putting this aside, the situation with the Albanian bloc was for 20 years dominated by DUI. And as time went by, many corruption scandals that remained untackled by the judiciary, by the judicial branch, actually were piled up on their portfolio. So the opposition was very fragmented and could not seriously jeopardize the power of DUI. So finally, the good thing about this is that there will be a struggle between two more or less equal in power options that are always a good thing in democracy, of course, and may at the end result in DUI going to opposition after more than 20 years.
How is it viewed by the public, the involvement of the Kosovo Prime Minister Kurti in meetings with the opposition Albanian bloc?
Well, there are pretty good things in terms to say about Kurti's government from this perspective, from the political scientist perspective, so to say, in the field of domestic reforms, rule of law, putting criminals into jail, and so forth and so on. How he plays in the Kosovo-Serbia situation it's another thing. But in this way, he is not perceived as a corrupted, ethnically motivated politician who is interested only in financial gains. However, it is a first case in our political scene where representatives from another political party in another country join the blocs here And there is a lot of flirting with Albanian irredentism, Greater Albania, a lot of symbolical narratives that again romanticize this idea and mobilize voters on these grounds. So this is the basic, the fundament of the biggest criticism towards Kurd involvement in the Macedonian elections at this point. Among the Macedonian parties, they are criticizing this, and among the DY, who feel threatened by his endorsement of the opposition in the country, they feel threatened again as well because of they are getting a serious competition and try to criticize him on whatever ground possible. Although even the Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama, in numerous times before, was meddling in the domestic affairs of North Macedonia with inappropriate comments. However, he never reached this point of nominating a representative of his party with Macedonian citizenship to join the list at the elections.
Interesting. The puzzle is getting even more complicated. But what are the main issues that these parties will campaign on? Is corruption a major campaign issue? Because it is a major concern for the Western partners, which are saying that they will have zero tolerance policy once the new government in North Macedonia will be established.
Okay. The situation with the corruption is very bad, I would say. Just to illustrate this in figures very shortly, we have action plan to fight against corruption based on the strategy. So the government managed to implement only 10%, 20% last year and 10% the year before of the reforms envisaged in this action plan. So it illustrates how big the commitment is. Actually, there is no commitment at all in this regard. For the first time, the corruption started to be in the first, among the first after the living standard and the wages, of course, due to the high rate of inflation. For the first time, the corruption was ranked among the two priorities of the people. It was always among the first five, so to say, but now people really feel it. And the problem, to be even bigger, the impunity, the corruption of the judiciary, who is really not doing anything on these grounds, versus accumulates the entire experience of the corruption in the country. Big private procurement project with lot of no transparency. There is no accountability on this regard, and the judiciary is not effectively doing any investigation, including the prosecution. So this is the biggest problem. Also, there is a big criticism on the side on the international partners who are often favoring the actors in the domestic political domain, particularly the government, and saying that they are very good international partners due to their cooperation on big geopolitical topics such as NATO and EU membership. But in reality, domestically, they performed very well when it comes to rule of law and fight against corruption, which only reinforces their practices and is not helping a lot that these practices are scrutinized and sanctioned.
Is brain drain phenomena, the immigration of skilled workers, an issue for the campaign?
No, I wouldn't say so. It's not an issue on the campaign. It's always around the debate, but I don't think it will be part of the main topics, because whoever is running the country, regardless of its performance, the brain drain will continue. I mean, it has another variables behind it that are historically connected, that are dependent on the big context. So the brain drain is from Spain to Turkey. The entire Mediterranean is really full of young people going up on the north for better lives and jobs.
And is there any role, is there any concern that Russia is influencing somehow the campaign and the elections in North Macedonia?
I would say that the Russian influence is present here, but it is overrated in many aspects. There is undeniably great support for Macedonia, both NATO and EU membership, much more different than the situation in Serbia. Russia is affecting the Macedonian media landscape through some media outlets here that are owned by Russian owners, or through the media outlets in Serbia that are very popular here, especially among the ethnic Macedonian situation. But in terms of critical infrastructure, in terms of investments, in terms of whatever presence, energy dependency, I wouldn't say there are any significant risks that Russia will do anything significant here in the region. Although the hybrid campaigns and attacks through the social media are very strong as everywhere in the region. The security risks come from Kosovo and Serbia, and Republika Srpska definitely. North Macedonia here, I wouldn't say is an issue.
And lastly, but I hope they are more important, the presidential elections. Who are the favorites to win, and what will be their key policies?
Still, their standpoints are not well known. The electoral campaign is about to start. It hasn't started yet, so I couldn't give opinion really on their standpoints. There are two candidates of the biggest Macedonian parties, Mr. Pendarovski and the candidate of the opposition, female professor with a lot of experience in politics, whose attitudes are in line with what I was saying about the VRMNO's political position on the negotiation process and the relations with Bulgaria, that they are not going to negotiating and accept all the conditions that are now set for Macedonia to be accepted, but they will try to renegotiate or at least ask from Bulgaria to make some symbolic gestures and show their true European identity, because there are many verdicts by the international courts for human rights against Bulgaria for the treatment of Macedonian minority there, who is, by the way, not recognized as well, that Bulgaria still continues to ignore. And in the same time, they are asking the same from this country, but it's a power politics after all, and the stronger is doing what he can, of course. The outcome at the end will be which are pretty much close in the polls at this point. Who will win will depend on the support of the Albanian opposition, of the Albanian parties, not the opposition. And at this point, endorsement of none of these candidates is on the horizon.
Interesting. So there are more puzzles to be discovered in the next weeks. Marko, thank you very much for sharing your insights with us and describing how is the political landscape a few weeks before the general elections that seems to be crucial for the EU perspective of North Macedonia. Thank you for talking to Balkans Debrief.
It was a pleasure.
And thank you for watching us.